This is David Finzer, broadcasting for the second hour from the Gibraltar of the Balkans, the historic city of Novi Sad along the banks of the beautiful Danube River here in Serbia. That's not Siberia for those of you who are geographically challenged. It's a lot warmer and a lot closer. We're here in Europe. You can join our conversation by calling toll-free in the U.S. and Canada at 1-855-655-2121 or by Skype at ORN Live, or you can email me at david@truthandliesradio.com. Well, according to the U.S. debt clock, the total U.S. national debt is $15,767,619,000,000 and counting, which is a debt per taxpayer of $138,620. Meanwhile, the domestic product, of course, lags behind. It's $15,196,480,000,000. So it's something like the debt is something like 106, 107% of the GDP. The total U.S. debt, when you combine everything, amounts to a whopping $183,718 per citizen. In other words, Uncle Sam is broke. If Uncle Sam were rated the same way as some third world country, it would have a very, very negative credit rating with a negative outlook to come. Now, I want to apologize and mention Ray, one of my audience, one of my obviously devoted listeners. Ray wrote 3 supportive emails on Wednesday, and I just didn't have time to read them, but I wanted to thank you, Ray, for writing them. And yesterday I was unable to be on the air live, so I couldn't do it yesterday, but I did get them. I thank you, and you were not being ignored. Well, today's Friday, and Friday means that we have as my guest via modern technology, keep your fingers crossed that it continues to work, our technology correspondent, my nephew, Nick Finzer, the CEO of Internet Totality, LLC in St. Petersburg, Florida. Hello, Nick. How are you today?
Hey, hi, David. I'm doing great. I actually have some sunshine here after a week of constant rain.
Really? Okay, yeah. Well, it's getting hot here. It was 30 degrees Celsius today, which is 86, and the humidity was just unbearable. It got all the way up to 60%. Anyway, news. Now, this is something I've talked about before, but Nick had wanted to make some comments for the other Finzer, from the other Finzer. We have bicontinental Finzers, one in Europe, one in America. We talked about the hundreds of words to avoid using online if you don't want the government spying on you. Now, I did the whole list, and we put the whole list on the Facebook page. I'm just going to list 15 that I picked. Words like drill, exercise, cops, response, initiative, screening, crash, facility, cloud, gas, burn, virus, wave, recall, and pork. I could think of ways to use all of those words in sentences. I could probably make a sentence with all of those words in, or at least a paragraph that would make sense, that would still, I guess, set off the thought police. Nick, you apparently have some commentary on this.
Oh, I'm glad you included pork. I think that's my favorite of all of them. But
it's the Congress's favorite word.
Yeah, I'm wondering if they're talking about the food that Muslims don't eat, or the things that congressmen stick into every bill they pass. But anyways, one of the things I thought was interesting about the article that I sent you about that was that DHS apparently actually has a team of human analysts whose job it is to read Facebook, Twitter, and the news, and social media all day and look for these keywords. I'm sure that's costing us a lot of wasted money. But another interesting part was that the analysts are actually told to search for evidence of unfolding natural disasters, public health threats, serious crime such as mall and school shootings, major drug busts, and illegal immigration busts. My first reaction to that was, what, they don't get CNN in Washington? But it actually, I guess it does make sense, since, now we really live in a time where news tends to break on Facebook a lot of times faster than it does on the cable news channels. But I do think the illegal immigration and drug bust and stuff seems kind of strange, since INS is a department under DHS. So you'd think they'd know about that anyways.
Well, I can't imagine. When you go on Facebook and say, I've got 50 keys of Coke to sell, and, write me at.
Well, yeah, exactly. I mean, they're not going to find anyone soliciting drugs or planning terrorist attacks on Facebook. But what they might see is, oh my God, a tornado just hit my house. I don't know. It seems like Facebook wouldn't be the first thing I would do in a natural disaster, but I guess it kind of makes sense.
Well, I say a tornado hits my house every time Santiago brings his dog to my house. So I mean, what? I don't know,
but I guess in some situations, if a school shooting is happening, a teenager will pull out their phone and post something on Twitter. That's conceivable, but on the whole, it sounds like a really big waste of money. They say that their goal is not aimed at finding disparaging remarks about the government and signs of dissent, but I don't believe that for a second. I still think that's what they're really looking for, and anything else is secondary.
Well, considering the Facebook posts I put up every night for truthandliesradio.com, I'm sure on Facebook, I'm sure they got somebody just watching me because I call the president everything but a gentleman.
Well, I'm pretty sure you have a drone permanently stationed above your house.
Yeah, I think all my neighbors have painted signs on their roof pointing toward my house that says Finzer lives there.
Well, with the Tuesday lists, I'm going to have to make sure I call you every Wednesday to make sure you're still around.
Yeah, that's true with Tuesday lists. That's true. So, in other words, you think that it's spin what they're saying, that they might be doing some of what they're saying, but it really is they are collecting dissidents.
I would think so. I mean, I don't believe anything they say ever, but yeah, I think some of what they say is probably true, and that's the pretense they're using, but. We only have less than 30 seconds. It reminds me of Mao Zedong's Let 100 Flowers Bloom, where he encouraged everyone to dissent from the government. They took down all their names and then shot them all. Anyway, this is David Finzer with Nick Finzer on Truth and Lies Radio. We're talking about technology, and we're on the Overseas Radio Network. We'll be gone for 3.5 minutes, so don't go away because we'll be right back. This is David Finzer for Truth and Lies Radio on the Overseas Radio Network. I'm here with my nephew, Nick Finzer, the CEO of Internet Totality LLC in St. Petersburg, Florida. We're talking about technology, and now we're going to talk about Red China's blog censorship rules and its U.S. parallels. What's the opposite of free speech? If you answer totalitarian censorship, you're right, and you're old. In the internet age, censorship is all about allowing partial, temporary free speech, then shutting it down once enough has been said. The innovator, as usual these days when it comes to autocratic governance, is Red China, where the leading microblog site, Sina Weibo, unveiled its modified censorship model this week. Users get 80 points. Monitors will take away points for violations. God, it sounds like school crossing guards. These include the censor's old favorite, criticizing the government. You can also lose points for spreading rumors, which I thought was the whole purpose of the internet sometimes, or promoting cults, a provision apparently aimed at the banned spiritual movement Falun Gong, which is not a religion, and of course also includes all religion. The monitors also scour your comments for puns or other circumlocutions used to avoid censorship in the past. So if you run out of points, you're cut off. So if free speech is so threatening, why don't the dictators that run Red China just shut the blogs down altogether? The deeper reason is to keep the masses microblogging so that the Chinese regime can reap important gains from it. Red China's thugocracy
is engaged in a complicated and possibly risky process for them of trying to gain some of the advantages of a free society without the disadvantage of having to put itself up for election. Free speech is a crucial part of that experiment, which could backfire on them for sure. And I know, Nick, you have some things to say about this.
I do. I think at the just before the break, you pretty much hit it on the head when you mentioned Mao Zedong's "Let 100 flowers bloom." This is exactly the same thing. I mean, yeah, they want to gather some other evidence about how people feel about certain things, but I think they're giving the Chinese people just enough rope to hang themselves with, so that once they say something that the Chinese government doesn't like, they can find the dissidents and come in and shoot them or block them up or whatever it is that the Red Chinese will do.
Well, yeah, I mean, this has been done in other totalitarian regimes. Remember, in the early days of the Soviet Union, when they couldn't raise enough food, all of a sudden Lenin reversed himself with their new economic policy and got farmers planting again and everything else. And once they got it all organized, then they shot them and took everything back over and recollectivized the farms. So this is a model that goes on and on and on throughout history. And one wonders, do you think this is something the United States is doing?
Well, it's a lot like the previous story where what the United States is doing when they're looking for this sort of thing. Now, we don't have the infrastructure in place, as far as I know, where the government can actually currently impose censorship on the internet like the Chinese government can. But it's basically the same thing. They're searching for dissent, and, who knows what the government is going to do with it.
Well, and it would be very easy, without even passing a law, for example, to go to Facebook and say, we have decided that we're going to do a thorough IRS audit and disallow all kinds of things. And, we're going to go through from A to Z your books unless you decide to cooperate a little more fully. I mean, there's lots of ways for a publicly traded company now, especially, to receive pressure from the United States government.
Yeah, absolutely.
And, it amazes me what people write on Facebook. I still get personal messages on Facebook about things that I wouldn't even put in an open email. I would only put it in an encrypted email, and yet people write it on Facebook like somehow people aren't reading it. And we pretty much know they are. We know they're listening to our phone conversations, that Echelon's picking things up. And so I believe, and I'm not a conspiracy theorist. A lot of my friends are, but I'm not. I think it's very open. I think they're collecting a huge database. And I don't know if we have 80 points, but I suspect there's some threshold that we don't know and may never know until and unless America becomes a free country again, that then causes action to be taken against individuals. It's a good way to find out who the dissidents are, and in fact defeats the right of the people to speak freely and to petition their government for redress of grievances, tying it back into what I talked about in the first hour.
Right. Well, even if there may not be a threshold right now before action is taken, but that's certainly the direction that we're moving. I mean, especially when you look at other things that have happened, like the 2012 NDAA. You just putting all the pieces together, it doesn't paint a very pretty picture for the future.
Well, no. In fact, essentially the right of privacy has been completely ignored, but I don't know why we should be surprised about that. All the other rights, that's a Ninth Amendment right, which is not specifically enumerated. And so since they ignore the ones that are specifically enumerated, it doesn't really surprise me that they ignore those that were not specifically enumerated. I mean, it really strikes me that they're creating a profile of all of the potential dissidents. They're just like any kind of gun registration. They want to know who has the guns. Now with FATCA coming, they want to know where all your assets are, so that when someone opposes them, pressure can be brought. Now, maybe they won't kill people. Maybe, Obama for a while is going to keep his promise. But he's told so many lies that are provable that I have a hard time believing. How many lies does it take before someone becomes a liar? And so it certainly seems to me that a hit list, some kind of hit list, is being put together that is far bigger than we can possibly know. Because some of the things I say and then the comments that I get back on the Facebook page, some of them are much, much stronger even than I say. And I'm sure those people are all being added to the target list.
Yeah, I think you're right. And, it's really interesting what you brought up about how they want all the information about what people are saying online, how they want all the banking information, and then possibly with gun registrations and whatnot. I think that's what they call total information awareness, where they just want to know everything so that they can act upon it. I remember, I think in 2002, the federal government created the Information Awareness Office in the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, DARPA, whose purpose was to bring together all the different projects that are focused on supplying surveillance information and to track and monitor terrorists and other things that they consider threats to national security or perhaps to their own power.
Well, what's really interesting to me is they've done this all in the executive department.
Right.
And yet Congress used to have in both houses an Un-American Activities Committee, which had its own investigative staff, and they were the ones who found a lot of the Soviet spies in the United States. Was not the FBI, was not the CIA, but were congressional investigators elected by the people. And now that has been abolished. It's called McCarthyism. But we have a president who will not give up his information and tells us that if you have nothing to hide, you shouldn't worry about it. But he won't give up his information, but he wants to know about everybody else. So anyway, we have to go. We have to break again. We'll be back in just a few minutes. This is David Finzer for Truth and Lies Radio on the Overseas Radio.